My name is Thorsten Overgaard. I'm a Danish photographer. I travel the world taking photographs and teaching photography. Today I will talk about the Leica SL3. Before we get into it, below the video there is free downloads. There's an ebook I wrote about Elmarit-R, and other famous photographers and their famous photographs, how they took them and the story behind them. There's also, I write about why I photograph and how I photograph. And that one is free. It's normally $38. Today you just put in your name and your email and the code, and it's free. Also today, two other downloads. There is presets and styles for Capture One and Lightroom, and that is the black and white color styles and presets I use for my editing of my files from Leica cameras and basically any other camera to get the Leica look. And as a bonus, there's also a free new book, ebook, that is called What is Sharpness in Photography, and that is about a thing that everybody strives to get, which is sharpness, or I call it clarity. And surprisingly, and that is what you can read in the book, it is not so much about the lens, it is more about what you'll read in the book. Just go below the video, put in your email and the code, and you have the downloads in a few minutes. The Leica SL3 is the third edition, third model of the Leica SL that came out in 2015. And since it came out, I have been saying that I would make a sort of shade for it. And let me just tell about that quickly, because we have worked on it actually surprisingly long to make something simple. And we are almost there, and I just want to tell you what we'll be doing. So if you look at the front of the lens here, it gets really banged up. This one actually haven't been used a lot. I mean, it's been around, but it's not gotten heavy use, but it looks like it got really heavy use. And you say, generally I don't put UV fillers in front of my lenses because I just don't like UV fillers. I don't think they protect. It's just one layer more of dirt and dust. And one thing now that I'm talking about UV fillers, so UV fillers is clear glass. They're basically not supposed to do anything for the photo, they're just supposed to protect the lens. The front glass in any modern lens is very strong glass. It's kind of like my glasses. I can clean them, and I can wash them in soap and water and clean them with a towel, and they don't get scratches. So they have a strong surface. The same with optical lenses from Leica. In recent years, that means basically the last 10-15 years maybe, the front glass is really strong. Some of the lenses, for example, 28 1.4 Summilux lens for the M system, the front glass on that one is just purely for protective of the glass, because some of the glass types used in lens design is very soft because they have some qualities, and part of, not the quality, but part of the recipe is that you get soft glass, and they are put inside the lens so you can't scratch them. In any case, you could say the SL lenses comes normally with a shade, and it looks like this, and I 100% dislike this shade. I would never use it. There's one interesting thing. This is the 50 2.0 SL lens that came out in 2023. And this is a less expensive lens than the other SL lenses. This is only $1,800 or $2,000. In Leica term, that is considered incredibly inexpensive. And as the first one, it actually comes with a metal hood, which is better than the previous ones that comes with a plastic hood, but still like this shape. So you have, generally with SL lens, you have big lenses. This is not so big, and it actually have faster autofocus than many of the other SL lenses. But if you imagine you have like a big lens and you add this, it's just not a pretty sight. So I work on different things I'll show you here. This is basically just prototypes we are playing with. So one thing, and this is basically my favorite, and that was the original idea that I wanted to do, is I wanted to make just a protective, not a shade, but just a protective ring here. so it doesn't get these dents. This one will get them, and then you can replace this one, and this one will come in black and red. And we have different types. This is by far my favorite, the most simple one. We have different types also that we played with. We have one here where it have a built-in filler, so you can actually put a filter in front of it. I'm a little bit, why would you put a filter in front of it when you have a protective ring? Then you could say take off the protective ring and put on the filter. And we have another one here that we haven't made black yet. That is basically the same principle. You screw it on, and then you can put on a filter on this one. You could also say, if you wanted to have use another thing that I dislike and I never use is lens caps, then you can still put on the lens cap, which you could say with the simple one, if this is the one you go with, you cannot put a lens cap on, then you will use the lenses like I do, that you just have this one protect the filter ring out here in case you need a filter, so you don't bang that up, and it protects the ring here. And this will come in black and in red, and red is so 100% my favorite, and you will see when it does exist in red that is the most beautiful thing. Then I also have made this one with my partner in crime Jonas in Hong Kong, and this is a ventilated shade for SL lenses, and this one will be black, and maybe we'll also make it in red. And maybe you like it, maybe you don't. It clips on, and you can say, I think definitely it is prettier than this one, then I'd rather have this. Then you can ask, why would I have a ventilated shade on a SL lens? Well, you would have it to give it a classic look, kind of like, I'll show you here. I have a lens somewhere. So here's the 21 Summilux that have a ventilated shade. And just to show you, one of the things we did here is we have a thread in the front here. You can put in a filter, an ND filter or UV filter, whatever, on this one. And normally the ring that comes with this one is black, so it's black. I put on the red one because I like it. And this, if I put it on here, it'll give you an idea how it's going to look. It's going to be super awesome, sexy with a red ring in front of here. This is, believe it or not, a project. It's taken us about 4 years to get this far, and these are going to be released in the beginning of 2025, spring 2025. You can get them. You can't pre-order them yet, but you can go. There will be a link below the video where you can go and you can send an email to get more information when they're available for shipping. The Leica SL3 here is a third model of the Leica SL. The first one came in 2015 with 24 megapixel. It was called Leica SL Type 601. And then came the Leica SL2 in 2019 with 47 megapixel. And then came Leica SL3 here in 2023. Or maybe it was 2024, who counts, with 60 megapixel. And before I tell you what I think about this camera, let me just tell you the story behind the SL. Actually, if you Google Leica SL these days, you will hardly find the original SL, but the original SL is actually this one. As you can see, this is called SL Mod because you can put on a motor. This is 1964 model that came out, and it lasted for about 11 years. And then came out the Leica R3. So now you pay attention because this is an R camera. So we go a little bit back in history. You can say Leica made the Leica M here that had actually been in production for 100 years. It was released in March or May 1925. So now this is 100 years ago, and you can say Leica basically defined the 35mm film format, so that means 24 times 36mm negatives or slides, and that is also today what is known in full frame in digital cameras. But this camera model that is very sturdy, very precise, and basically I wouldn't say they was always equipped with the best optics in the world, because there was actually a lot of other companies that made really good optics in the past. You could say Leica is different because they continued to strive to make the best optical lenses. So that's why I say it is the best lenses in the world. But they made this camera, and you could say around the end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s, they were under pressure from mainly Japanese producers. It was actually Germans also made what was called SLR cameras, so single lens reflex cameras. And single lens because there was a period where when you wanted to take photographs and you wanted to have you could say big resolution, high resolution, you would go medium format or something like that, and you could have a two-eyed reflex camera. So the big invention was that now it was a single reflex, so that is why it's SL, single lens. And if you look inside, you will see here that it has a mirror that goes up when you take the picture, and then the light from the lens goes in and hits the film in here, because this obviously is a film camera. So this was a camera that Leica made as an answer to all the pressure they had on the Leica M here. And you could say everything was about, for many years, everything in photography has been about faster. So you could say there was a period where it was like we want fast lenses, we want 1.2, f1.0 and so on. For example, this one sitting on this lens is a 90 2.0, also a fairly old lens. And then as an example of something that is really speed, you have here the motor. And I'll just take it off so you can get an idea how it is without. So this is the camera, you could say. This is not far from this. And this SL that Leica made or introduced in '64 is probably the one Leica and the one SLR camera in the world that feels the most like a M. And what do I mean by that? I mean, when you hold it, it is so sturdy, it's like a tank, and the precision of it, and it's basically indestructible. I'm sure I have two of them, and they're like, I wouldn't say they're like new, but you can't tell they're from '64. So that was the thing. So you can say, okay, so everything was about speed. If you think about that, this was what most photojournalists on newspapers and magazines was equipped with. Then they wanted fast lenses so they could photograph in low light, and they wanted really fast film so they could photograph also in low light. And that means if you imagine that you are photographing a war or something, anything news related, then you need really fast everything. And that's where it came in, that instead of you had to take a picture and you have to rewind, then you need a motor so you can rewind. You can take 2 or 3 pictures a second. And then, of course, later it became 5, 6, 16 pictures a second. So a lot of things in photography development of cameras have been driven by the need for speed, if you need it or not. You could say today we go SL3 here. What counts today is not so much how fast the lens is. It's still nice to have a fast lens, but what really drives the development is the amount of pixels, megapixels. You just want as many megapixels as you can get. Not that you need them, but you want them. And then you could say the lens design goes not so much towards light strong or low light lenses like f1.0 and f1.4 and so on. It goes towards perfect image quality. And one of the symbols, or one of the things that illustrates that, is that lenses for the SL system have been allowed to be big, even huge, because you could say when you have a big piece of glass and you have small tolerances in how precise the glass is, it's much easier, and also the grinding of the glass, it's much easier. The bigger the glass, you say, the lower the tolerances. But if you maintain very high tolerances, very high precision, and you have big glass, then you can make extreme image quality. And then you add to that also you have algorithms and AI that you can use to help improve the image quality. So that is the driving factor for some photography these days, is how detailed, how wide dynamic range, can you have, and then of course the megapixels. The speed, like with the motor here, not really an issue anymore, because you don't have a film that have to be forwarded with 2 or 4 or 6 frames per second. Now it's just digital, so fundamentally it's just a buffer that decides how many photos can you take per second. So those are the difference, but this is basically where the SL comes from, in a way. So pay attention again. So this is an R system, so that means this is an R lens that sits on this camera. And this is an M lens, and you can see they're smaller. This is a 90, this is a 50. So you could say this wasn't back then considered a big lens. There was fairly okay lens, it's manual focus and everything, and Leica made some really outstanding lenses. There's an ongoing discussion actually still if the R lenses are the best Leica lenses, or maybe the M lenses. But then you could say R lenses haven't been made for a while, because what happened was that in late 1900, that's like before year 2000, Leica made, you could say, different models, R3, R4, and R6 and R6.2, 6.2 and so on. And here you have the Leica R9. So they did the R8 and R9. They're very similar looking. There's a few tweaks on them. So this basically became the last R film camera, SLR film cameras from Leica. But to try to keep up with the Jones, Leica decided in 2004 they're going to make a digital back for this camera. And you have, if you haven't seen it, you have to see the video I did. It's a short video. It's just about 1 hour about this camera and the whole system. In short, imagine you have a film camera like this, and then you open the film, the back of the camera, and you take off the back door of the camera, and you put on a new door that have a digital sensor. And then you put on what looks like a motor winder down here, but with actually all the electronics, the battery and so on, to drive the digital camera. So now you have a digital camera, and you could actually in a few minutes turn it back to film if you wanted to. So Leica made about 3,000 of these together with Kodak and Imacon. Imacon is the ones that used to make the best scanners in the world. Then Imacon was sold to Hasselblad, and somehow Hasselblad didn't think that was a great idea to continue working with Leica, and that's why they only made 3,000 digital backs. So the R system was a little bit of a still stand, and people were waiting. Now comes the Leica R10. That must be the next one. It's going to be a digital R camera that you can use all the R lenses on. But big surprise, Leica said, actually we just looked at it and we decided we're not going to make the R cameras anymore. We're stopping production of the R cameras and the R lenses. However, for you who have bought for a few or many $1,000s of R lenses, and you really love to use them for your bird photography, landscaping and portraits and whatever, we will make a future M digital camera that can also take R lenses, or at least we will make something so you can use your R lenses on a digital camera. And the answer to that was the Leica M240 that came out with, so that was the first Leica M camera. Came out in 2013, so people kind of had to wait for 4 or 5 years in suspense to find out where can I put my R lenses, on which camera is it going to be. But in 2013 Leica came out the M240, so that's the first Leica M, R, M, SL. We'll do it in slow motion. This is the M camera. It's digital since 2009, but the Leica M camera that came out in 2009, the Leica M9, was a CCD sensor, which was great and so on. But the M240 had a CMOS sensor, and one of the things, one of the features of a CMOS sensor, apart from that it doesn't use a lot of energy, it doesn't develop a lot of heat, and they're cheaper to manufacture, is also that you could do live view. So that means suddenly you could put on electronic viewfinder on an M camera And when you have an electronic viewfinder, then you basically put on any lens on the camera, because what you see is what you get. You can focus via the electronic viewfinder, you can see the exposure and everything, and that is where you could put the R lenses. So out with all the R system here. Now it was the Leica M 240, M10, M11, all of those you can put on R lenses, and fundamentally any other lens you can come up with. But then Leica surprised the world again, because in 2015, out of the blue, they released the first Leica SL. And it's very interesting, because you could say the SL is the camera that shouldn't happen. Because if you look at photography, some voices would say that because of smartphones, all cameras are going to die, nobody's going to need a camera, they just want a smartphone. That was one line. You had another line where you could say professional press photographers, which is somehow a dying race compared to how many there was of them before and how many photos they took. There wasn't and isn't that many of them anymore, but when you had professional press photographers, they would usually have two big DSLR cameras like this one, digital cameras, one with a long zoom and one with a short zoom, a wide angle zoom. And this is heavy stuff to carry, but that was just how it was done. It wasn't anything new in that, it was just that it was digital instead of film. It was always heavy. Maybe you would carry 12 or 20 kilos all the time, every day as a photojournalist on a newspaper. But what had happened previously was that a lot of these photographers found out like, wow, I can do the same with a mirrorless camera. I can just have a little mirrorless camera and I can do the same photos as I can with a big DSLR from Canon or Nikon or whatever. So professional photographers basically went with small cameras, and you can also, if you have heard the expression that full frame is the new medium format, so that means that the 24 times 36mm sensor in a camera like this basically can outperform what was known as medium format like 6.6 or 4.5.6 in the old days in film, because sensors, digital sensors can just resolve so much more detail than film. At least that's what we say they can do. So in a time and age where cameras are dying and professional photographers use smaller cameras, why would you make a big camera like this? And there is no explanation for that, except that Leica did make the SL system in 2015, and actually it rebooted this whole idea or temptation to collect cameras. So now you're back again, just like when you have Nikon and Canon film cameras and so on back in the 70s and 80s, you would get one camera or several cameras, and then you would start collecting lenses. So you had a lot of lenses. So Leica made the SL, what is a kind of like, it is a SLR camera, except it doesn't have the reflex. So when you take off the lens of this one, you see the sensor. So there's no mirror, so that's why it's not reflex, it's just SL, so single lens. And that is where single lens comes from. That is just one lens on a camera instead of two lenses, which is way back we had that. But still it's called single lens. Part of the concept here is that Leica said, well, we're going to make lenses for this, and it's going to have autofocus. And autofocus takes out space in a lens. You cannot make small lenses like this with autofocus. If you want to add autofocus, you have small motors and everything inside, so they have to be big. But also a different, one specific thing that Leica did was that lens designer Peter Karpe, the master lens designer, the only rock star that I have at Leica, he had figured out that the bayonet of a SL camera have to be this size, not smaller and not bigger, in order for, you could say, enabling Leica to make any type of lens, 9mm fisheye, wide angle, or 800mm tailor lens, or zoom, or what have you. Any type of lens you could ever come up with that you would make would fit with this bayonet. And somehow, when this system came out, Nikon, Canon, Fuji, and everybody else woke up and said, "Wow, this is brilliant! This is wunderbar! Let's revive the SLR kits. Meaning, let's make a camera that people buy this camera and then buy into a whole new system. They buy lenses, and new cameras every 18 months or 3 years, and then they buy more lenses." And this actually did work, and you could say that is Leica came up with this, reinventing the concept of having a SL camera. So far history, let me tell you what I think about the Leica SL3. When I see the Leica SL3 and the SL2 and the Leica SL, what I see is basically here a box with a sensor. You could say it reminds me of Leica made actually a digital camera back in the 90s, believe it or not. It was a scan camera. It was basically just a square box that you could put on any lens. You could put Hasselblad, Nikon, Leica R, whatever lens you wanted to put on this camera, you could put on it. And the reason it was a scan camera was that you had to connect it with a computer. You put it on a tripod, and it was for studio work like product shots and cars and stuff. And you press the shutter release, and it would take first one color, next color, next color, red, green, and blue, and compose it into a color photo of very high quality. And listen to this. In the 90s, these were 60 megapixel cameras. Ridiculous big files for, if you consider the computers we had back then in the 90s. I mean, Photoshop could hardly open a 60 megapixel or 100 megapixel file. It took a while. You had to have a really powerful computer. But Leica did make that camera. And for me, the Leica SL, apart from that it's like a system camera and everything, and it comes with a whole lineup, it is basically just a box holding a sensor here. And then you could put on any lens. And you could say I put on this one, I have the 50 SL. So this is the so-called cheap or economical Leica 50mm lens that they were made, and they also made a 35mm. And these are great because they're actually lightweight, they're not so expensive, the quality is undisputable. You could say if you get the 50 Apo, or you can get the 50 1.4 spherical and so on, those will be a tad better, or you could say they would be perfect, whereas this one is a very good lens, but generally people who have Leica, they want the best. And you could say use it a step, well, this lens actually show it, from really good wunderbar lens, $1,800, $2,000, to the best is basically you go from $2,000 to $5,000, $6,000. So that's what it costs to get the last 5% of image quality and the small details that you appreciate, and that you know that you have the best. So this is great. You can say this one have really super fast autofocus. It has faster autofocus than the other SL lenses. It's probably something that's going to be updated with firmware. And when I put on this lens recently, the camera automatically updated the firmware in the lens, and I actually feel it went really fast with autofocus. So I just go here, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. It's like almost instant. Then you could say there is other cameras that have faster autofocus. Sony is the master of autofocus. There's no doubt about it. Everybody else, Canon, Nikon, Leica, would love to know what is happening at Sony, that they can make that fast autofocus. But this is plenty. And then you could say so when the Leica SL came out, I had a few, actually very few, almost nobody, but I did have a few people in my workshop and people I knew of that said, I don't need the Leica M anymore, I'm gonna get SL. And I would meet people that would have like some fancy leather strap system that could have 2 SL cameras with big zooms and big tail lenses and whatever, and they loved it. I'm more the kind of this one, solid brass, and you drop it on the floor, nothing really happens, you pick it up, it does get a dent, but that's part of the patina for Leica. And it's discreet, and it feels like you're really taking a photograph. I love that. And it doesn't really matter. You could say, I have, well, so I got this 50. I also have a 35 1.4. This is actually the one that is shooting the video. Always on a Leica SL601, because in my opinion, that's the one that have, for me, the easiest and best video feature. The Leica SL2S is also great, and the upcoming Leica SL3S will probably also be the 24 megapixel generation of sensors, which are really good for video. But let me show you what you can do with this one, because you can take off the lens, and we are back to the concept that you just have a box with a sensor. And you can say that is fundamentally what a camera is. It is a light sensitive sensor. It used to be film, now it's a digital sensor. And then they have controls here of light. And the great thing about the SL3 is that it has the ISO dial here. So you can change the ISO here. You don't have to press in it or something. You just turn it, and it doesn't really slide by itself. Now it's 2,500 on this one, and then now I go 500, and I can go all the way up to 6 million ISO. Apparently not on this model yet, but it's 100,000 ISO, which is plenty for most things. But what I do is that now I can start putting on stuff. So one thing I will do with this one, and which a lot of people, I think I can say a lot of people like to do, is that you put on an M lens. And this one is the 50.95 Noctilux. This is one of the most beautiful lenses ever made by anybody. It is purely a masterpiece. It's slightly expensive. I think it's 13,500 these days. You can buy them used, of course, for less. But it's not like they drop considerably in value. It's an amazing lens. So what is amazing about it is that you have super narrow depth of field, which you could say any lens, if you make a 50mm.95, is going to have super narrow depth of field. So the f-stop, the aperture, which is, let me show you quickly, is the inside of the lens here. When you turn the aperture, you just make the whole through more narrow. For each stop here, you go from 1.4, when you go from 0.9 to 1.4 to 2.0. For each stop, you reduce the light with half, so it's a way to control the light. What it also does is that it changes the depth of field. So the more narrow the hole is, the more you have things in focus in the back and the front, which most people will say, but that's what you want sharpness. Not everybody wants sharpness. You want to have narrow depth of field, so the background is blurred out and the foreground is blurred out, so you can direct the viewer's attention to what is sharp, because that's what the eye looks at first. But also you can make very artistic things. You can make, and this one makes things unreal. But here comes the detail about the Noctilux, is that this one is actually where you focus it. It is very sharp and detailed and very accurate colors, and that is what makes this Noctilux different from, you could say, Canon made a 50.95 back in the day also, which is not as high as this one, is wider, and it is in one way it's a beautiful lens because it have a very dreamy look. At the same time, it's not an excellent lens because even where it's supposed to be sharp and in focus, it is not sharp and in focus. You don't have the details, and this one has, and Leica before this made a 51.0, which also is fairly well sharp and detailed in where you focus it, but not as much as this one. So this is the high tech of what is called low light lenses. That originally our concept was you can take pictures at night or low light. You imagine like you're in Vietnam War at night, you want a 51.2, and that's what Leica made and other brands made. Today you have so high ISO you don't actually need a light strong lens, but you need one that has narrow depth of field. So this one is beautiful on the SL3 because you can look through the electronic viewfinder here, and you could say this is undoubtedly the most beautiful electronic viewfinder existing in today's photography. And it has been the Leica SL601 that came out in 2015. It's the same EVF on all of them. There's also here, you can adjust the diopter here for your eyesight. Mine, I need new glasses soon, so I'm 2 clicks to the left. The reason this is the most beautiful EVF in any camera system in the world, anywhere, even, I will promise you, in the whole universe, is not because the screen is better. The screen in the electronic viewfinder here, because it's a small screen basically, just like you have a screen on the back, you have a little screen inside the camera. The screen is probably the same as any other screen, but what matters is the optics in front of it, that you can see it very clearly and it doesn't strain your eyes. It's very relaxed. You can look at this into this electronic viewfinder all day and you don't get pain in the eyes, which you do with other camera systems, and which is a sign that something is off. It's kind of like you've got glasses, they're wrong, your eyes are going to feel really bad. And I wish I could take this one apart for you, but I can't. But if you saw, Leica have always been famous for their optics, and the optic part of Leica have existed for 150 years and more, because they used to make microscopes with optics, and then they went into the camera industry in 1925 with optics. So this one have an optical viewfinder. So that means you look through this viewfinder here and you see frame lines, and there's a focusing part over here. This little eye here is focused. So basically you make a triangular measurement of the distance, and that's how the manual focus works on this one. It's a miracle. It could be done 100 years ago. It's still a miracle it can be done today, and it is so precise. But the reason I would love to take this apart, and I'm not going to do it today, maybe one day I'll take it apart, and you'll see have a whole rangefinder mechanism in here. And it's like looking into a Swiss watch if you could combine optics and Swiss watches. You imagine like you turn the focus here, and then the optics here move and you see the precise distance. But that is one thing that it sits in here, and you can say it's not really the reason that Leica costs so much, but it doesn't make it cheaper, let's put it that way. But what is magnificent, and you can actually, if you go out in a Leica store, you might be able to find a Leica store that have a Leica M240 in parts where you can see the brass top plate, how it looks, and you can see actually the rangefinder mechanism. And you will see if you look for the rangefinder mechanism, everything is blurred. Because in front of the rangefinder mechanism sits a little piece of optics here, and that's the one you look for. And that piece of little optic makes everything super sharp, again, very detailed. So kind of this know-how about precision optics goes again in the electronic viewfinder here. So it is a screen like everybody else has, and this is why this one probably sticks out a little bit, because it has to have really good optics, which it has. And this optical viewfinder or optics in front of this one is very similar to the Leica S, which is the medium format of Leica that they have done for some years. Now they paused it, and it's probably going to come back in, I'll tell you when it comes back. But this is one of the beauties of this system. Okay, so let's go back to here. We have this box you can put on any lens. So you could put on also, let's see, the 21mm Summilux I had here. Beautiful lens, kind of a almost cinematic, chunky lens on the M system, which is made for. So imagine like a 21mm where you have narrow depth of field, so you have something in the foreground is in focus and the background is blurred, and the way it plays with the light of the autofocus area and light coming from behind is just amazingly beautiful. Then you can also go R lenses. So you could go back to Leica R lenses like this one, and this one is like a whole adapter stack. It can probably sometimes it can be done more elegant, that you get like a an adapter that goes directly from SL to this. It doesn't really matter, it's the same. Here's like a SL to M, from M to R, and here we have a 19mm 2.8 for the Leica R system. That is a really beautiful lens. You could say if you start talking videos, then some of these vintage lenses, which they are now when they're back from the 70s, 80s, 90s, they're vintage, you can get some really interesting ones. You can also play with other things. So for example, here I got recently in Singapore, I fell over this lens. This is Nikon. See if it fits in this one somehow. There we go. So this is a Nikon for Nikon, 50mm 1.2. The reason I got this lens is that I expect it has a special look, but actually when I was a teenager I bought this one secondhand, and I didn't have it for very long. Then I got rid of it again, and I kind of always regretted it. So now, so many years after, I finally got it back again, and I haven't really used it a lot. I used it a little bit, and it's like very milky in the sense that it doesn't have a high contrast. And as any older lenses that doesn't have coating on the lens surfaces, when light hits into the lens, even if the light source outside the frame, you can have light coming in from the sun or some reflection or just a lot of light in front of you, it milks out because there's no coating to eliminate the reflection inside the lens between the glasses. It is also what makes a lens really beautiful sometimes, because it gives, it can give flare and special effects that somehow you could say with the newer lenses, everybody seems to agree that we need to get rid of all reflectors and everything, artifacts. Everything have to be just perfect, like an iPhone, which can get really boring really quickly. And that's why you see big movies, Star Wars and so on, Mission Impossible, they spend amazing amounts on putting flares into the movies and special effects with warped lens and everything like that. You can also go here, you can go Russian. Here's a small Russian lens. So this is a 58 2.0, also a lens that have absolutely no control of light. You can make flare and everything. And it has, funny enough, a big brother here. This is a 85 1.5. That I've been playing with, and this is also one that you can just in a one little small click you can put it on the Leica SL3, and now you can make amazing movies, or you can make just very interesting pictures that people just can't figure out how did you do that. And the way you did it is you found an old lens. Some of the old lenses are super expensive, some are rare. Usually rare and expensive goes together. Some are just amazing, and you can say this one is not a rare lens. You can buy it on eBay and many other places. They cost almost nothing, a few hundred, compared to Leica. It's nothing, and they have a special look. And then you can go over and you can put on morphing filters like this, and then suddenly you have your own special effect department. So that is what you can do with the SL, and you would say that makes it really, really, really amazing that you have a system here that is basically a box with a sensor you can put on anything and you can really produce. And speaking of production, let me talk a little bit more about that. The reason that the Leica SL3 is amazing is exactly this, that you can put on any lens and you can produce things with it. So here SL3 is 60 megapixels, and as I said before, you have the ISO dial over here, you have the aperture ring set on the lens here, so you can actually see what it is and you can change it with your fingers. If you have an autofocus lens, you change the aperture on this one, and you can also change the shutter speed on the reel here. So that means that you have totally control of the light, and at the same time you see the image here through the lens, and you say if you want to, when you want to zoom in and focus, you press this one and you go in 10x, and now you can see that whatever you're focusing, even with a manual lens like this, now it's in focus, and it stays there because this is not an autofocus lens. If it was an autofocus lens, you would have to focus, refocus, and so on. And even the autofocus lenses that Leica have, it's great that you autofocus, you press the autofocus, it's focusing, and you can actually change the focus slightly with this focus wheel here. Which sometimes it's nice that you can say, if the autofocus focuses on my glasses, but it's my eyes you want in focus, you have to lock the focus and then you turn it so you see now it's better. But this concept makes it quite a machine for production. You put on any lens, you can say, so here's the bad or the weak thing about the Leica SL, and here's the strong thing. So the weak thing about the Leica SL, for me and for people who like small, simple, compact cameras, is that it's just not a compact camera. It's a big camera, and that's okay if I walk out and I decide now the sun is low, I'm going to go out and photograph for 1.5 hours till sunset, and then maybe 15-20 minutes after sunset. That's what I'm doing for the next 2 hours. I'm photographing. Then it's fine. I take out this camera and I put on one lens. I could take more lenses with me, but normally I would just take one lens and I go take photographs. And in the challenging low light, where I can shoot against the light, I can shoot with the light and light from the side and everything, I can actually see the exposure. I can press the button here, in here, and now, there we go. It goes from aperture priority, and then I go to manual. So now it's totally manual. I see the preview and I say, oh, I need higher ISO. I turn the ISO dial. I say I want more depth of field or more sharpness. I turn the aperture and then I see, okay, so I need to change the shutter speed. This is the right exposure. And there we are. Very easy to use, but not very fun or easy to carry. And I happen to have used this one a lot recently. So I had a lot of stuff where I just, you could say, it was a Noctilux look, basically my look, what I would normally make with an M camera. And you said normally the way I do things, if, well, it doesn't really matter if I work for myself, if I'm hired, I work the same way. When I see a photograph, I take it. So I'm not really, you can say if you want somebody to photograph everything that's going on, everybody who's there, from all angles, and you also want video or whatever, but just if you want everything that is happening, you don't hire me because I'm not going to photograph it. I photograph only, and that's not to be snobby, but I get hired to take my type of photograph, and my type of photograph is I see a photograph and I take it. And sometimes I take something that nobody else would ever think of taking a photo of, and it's just like, wow, this is amazing. How did that happen? Whatever. And you could say, as an example, if you take a wedding, you don't need, in my opinion, you don't need photograph of everybody attending a wedding, and every minute, every present, every cake, every dish, and every embarrassing drunk moment, and everybody dancing to every type of music. What you need is, you need the atmosphere of people coming together, friends and family coming together for a wedding, usually some sort of meet-up or reception before the actual wedding, maybe in a church. And you need some pictures from the church that shows the grandness of it. Maybe it has some religious feeling to it. And the priest and the couple and the excitement, they walk up the aisle, and then the kiss, and everybody throws, depending on country, in Denmark, everybody throws rice at them. And everybody is happy that it's over and a new life has begun. And then you need the actual wedding photos, which I actually like, that are more informal and not too official, because it is two human beings and not some setup. And then you have again that people meet for reception and dinner, and you need something showing the happiness and the style of that. And then you need when they cut the cake and some kissing. And you need the atmosphere of happy people, happy friends and family, and also often kids. And you can say when people start eating and drinking, then you can, well, you can't go home because you need cutting of the cake, which is a bit later, but you can at least take a break, because there's not many pretty pictures in people eating, and as the more they drink, the less pretty it gets. Maybe there's some speeches or something, and some beautiful moments in between you take pictures of, but else is the cutting of the cake, and then if they drive away in a fancy old Citroën or something, then you need a photo of that also. That is a wedding for me, and that's how I shoot events. Anyway, long story short, so I've used this a lot for portraits and atmospheres and stuff for magazines in the recent 2 longer assignments, where I used this one a lot, basically for 3 weeks, and I did like this, 50mm Noctilux. Most of the time, a few I had to use 21 Summilux for some other type of shots, and it just works. I mean, I go in there, I can see what I'm doing, so I kind of shorting down the production time, and I get the look that I want, because I know what I want. And where an M would be more like you have a vision, and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't. Here you have a vision, and you see you get it, you tilt it, you adjust it, you get it, next one. And that is super great when you're producing stuff. And you would say, interesting enough, after I'd done this for 2 or 3 weeks, I went on a travel, and then I went to the M. And I actually thought about that, wow, it's almost like if I only had this SL3 and I used this all the time, I think my enthusiasm would die a little bit for this. But you could say, if it's just a job, if I just have to make pictures, this camera can 100% do it, and it does it excellent. And it's not a huge kit, but it's not a compact walk around kit. So that's the good and bad thing for this one. And then you could say, if we just take the M also, well, then you have the M here, is beautiful. People still think it's your granddad's camera, and no matter what you tell them, you show them the screen, they still think it's film in it, because it looks like it's film, and it looks fairly 100 years old. And this is the beauty of it, that you have manual focus, and actually when you take pictures, you really feel like you take pictures. And because of the not electronic viewfinder, but optical viewfinder, you see things just like I see it through my glasses. I actually don't preview the narrow depth of field or exposure or anything, so I just have an idea. I want to take this photo, I want to make this photograph, and I use this camera as a tool to take the photograph. And sometimes I make something that is just out of this world, much better, much everything more than I could imagine and that I could prevision. And sometimes it just doesn't look the part or what you wanted to make, and that is the charm of this camera, and you could say the feel of it, which is I don't think you can put numbers on it or anything, or even a description. It's just when you hold this camera and use this camera, this is what makes me love photography, and it makes it very simple. The more you use it, the more simple it becomes. But it doesn't have the built-in electronic viewfinder. We'll get back to that, electronic viewfinder and M camera, but Leica M series just doesn't have electronic viewfinder built-in. You can put on one. It's not the same as this. This is a production machine. This one is an artistic tool, and I love it for that. And you could say any day of all the cameras I have, Deluxe, Q3 and what have you, any day I would pick the Leica M, because it just feels more right. It feels like this is how it should be. Back to the SL3, this is a great production tool, and it does have the simplicity that the M has. And you can say that's one of the beauties of the simplicity of the M, is you turn the aperture ring here, you turn the shutter speed here, you have the ISO dial here, and it doesn't have a lot of other buttons. And the SL3 is actually the same. It has an aperture ring, it has an ISO dial, it has the shutter speed here, and it has a few buttons. Then it also have, you could say, the big news, which I sort of was against it to begin with, is that it has a tilt screen here. And the great thing about the tilt screen, in my opinion, is that you only have the electronic viewfinder turned on, and then when you want to use the screen, you just tilt it out here, and here you have the screen, and it's on, and you put it in, and it's off. That's a great way to have a screen on the back. I don't like these screens that are on all the time. It tells everybody around you that you have a camera with you. It takes battery and so on. And of course also this one, you can tilt it so you can actually take a picture like this. So sometimes you need to get down low or you can go up high and so on. So that is a great thing, and you could say it doesn't really change much to the design. And speaking of design, the SL3 is on paper is actually slightly more heavy than the Leica SL2. But it feels, the design of the body makes it feel smaller and more compact. You don't feel the weight, I mean, it's just tiny. But it's not that it became more lightweight, but it feels smaller and more lightweight, and it just feels better on the hands. Of course, then you can do video on it and all this. Not really a big thing. You could say with like a SL3S is going to be the video edition of the camera, because you don't need a 60 megapixel video resolution. You need 24 megapixels is plenty. And the 24 megapixel generation of sensors that Leica have used, the M240, M10, and in the SL2S and the original Leica S or SL is a really good sensor for cinematic lenses and for movies. And you can take the original Leica SL601 that this video is made with, or the Leica SL2S, and you put on a light cine lens, and now we're talking lenses like 10,000 up, usually around 30,000 for a lens, which is a very normal price for a cinema lens for movie making and video making, filmmaking. And those lenses really sing on the 24 megapixel sensor. So the video part is not really what you get this one for. You can also do it. Then you have interesting thing. You have 60 megapixel sensor. So Leica introduced with the M11 is this one. Leica introduced 60 megapixels, and the same. So that's a new sensor generation. Who makes it and how they make it doesn't really matter. You buy, when you produce cameras, you buy a piece of hardware with a 60 megapixel sensor, and it also is used in other cameras. But you fine tune it to each model, so that means if Sony have the same sensor, it's going to look different because they use it differently. It's the same hardware. You could say the metal here could also be from the same place, but they definitely is not the same. So it's the same with the sensor. So 60 megapixel in this one, and then came the Q3 with 60 megapixel, Q3 43 with 60 megapixel, SL3 with 60 megapixel. And without saying too much about anything else, the SL3, the 60 megapixel sensor really sings. It is so amazingly detailed. The color science is good. It's okay. It's up there in the top. Nothing wrong with it. Let's put it that way. And that means you can take, where you will see an interesting thing is you take upper lenses, like I'll put this one over here. So you take a 50mm upper lens here, which is the world's best 50mm lens that Leica made for the M system. They have also made a 50mm for the SL, which is like this size but bigger. But if you have the M system, you have this one, you can put on this one, and there's also this 35mm Apo lens for the M system, which they also made for the SL system, just bigger. And the amount of detail you can beat out of this lens on this sensor on the SL3 is just mind-blowing. Maybe not that you need it, but it does give an interesting look into how much detail you can actually capture. And you say, maybe you shoot 60 megapixels, that's 60 million pixels, that's a lot if you want to count them. And you say generally in a normal photo you make a print like this, or you put it on a screen. So let's take an iPhone 16 Pro. The screen is 3 megapixel. So you don't really need a 60 megapixel to show a picture on a phone. iPad is, I think it's 4.5, 5 megapixel for an iPad Pro. And the same, a Mac Pro screen is also ridiculous small megapixels compared to the 60 megapixel you have. And you have to make a really big print in order to use all the megapixels. So in very few words, you don't need all those megapixels. But what is interesting is that you capture details. So you can see if you took a photo of me, the Leica optics is made to make very true optical recording of what you actually see. There's no over-sharpening. Leica is known for detailed but not sharp lenses. That's the Leica look. And that means you will see it in movies made with light cinema lenses, and a lot of movies, the aim is to have something that is pleasant to look at and looks very alive and looks kind of like 3D feel in the micro detail, but the overall ideal is not to have sharp edges. So that is the look you get with this, but then at the same time you can zoom in ridiculously on a computer screen and see details that you would never see in a print or anything. You can actually see very tiny details. And I like to call it more clarity than sharpness, because it's not about sharp edges, it's about how clear can you see something. And you say, well, our eyes is the ideal for everything. It was for painters and it is for photography. A lot of things is aimed at trying to see the world as the eyes see it. And if you look at how small optics we have in the eyes, compared even with some of the small lenses in the world, is the Leica M lenses. There's still a way to go that you can make so tiny small optical elements and you can get the same detail as the eye. Then you can say we have the mind that kind of applies not AI and not algorithms, but we do apply things to capture what we're seeing with the eye. So we capture things with the eye and we stitch it together, and we have the idea of here we have a room and we can see everything is in focus, which is actually not, but we pick each thing and then we compile it. So of course there's possibilities in this. And then the big question of course is, if you have 60 megapixel and you have a lens that can actually capture details with that clarity and the sensor can record it, even you never see it in the print, but it is there. In theory and probably also in real life, that should have an influence on how do you perceive that picture, even you just see in this size. Then you could say there can also be so many megapixels in a camera that the technology or whatever actually, and the firmware and everything, editing software actually stumble over the megapixels. It just gets too complicated, too much out of control. And there's some examples of that also, where just more megapixel is not something that makes you happy or increase the quality. In the Leica SL3, I would say the 60 megapixel sensor and particularly the modern lens design of Leica comes together and just makes something, you could say it's worth every penny, and it's mind-blowing, and it's great, and it is a hell of a machine if you want to make photographs and you want to have a high hit rate and high quality. This is the tool, and if you want to downgrade the quality and you go with some Russian not perfect lenses, then you get high quality of that very special look that you are seeking. I think that was all I had to say today. As you noticed in the beginning, I didn't promise this would be a short video, but this is as short as it can get when the subject is this interesting. But thank you for watching. Until I see you the next time, remember to always wear a camera, and also don't forget the free downloads below the video so you have something to read in the next few days.